Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Security Talk Down podcast. Finally got through week one. What a week. A lot of ups, a lot of downs, a lot of pros, a lot of cons. But what about that upset? Alabama, Florida State. Is Bama done for? Is Florida State a team to contend for? LSU, Clemson. Is LSU a team that we can actually take serious? And is Clemson not as good as we all thought? And much more to talk about today because I have a lot of questions about these quarterbacks. I have a lot of questions about some of these teams, and we're going to dive into that all today, and I'm very excited to talk about it. I talked to a lot of people about week one, and some people thought it was a disappointment. I myself thought it was just what I expected. Defenses are always going to be ahead of offenses, so that's why there wasn't as many fireworks on offense. And these top 10 matchups, of course, are going to lean on their defenses, and that's why two out of the top three games there was very low scoring and strong defenses and not very great quarterback performances, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But overall, happy about week one. Not so happy about the betting. We'll talk that later. Hopefully, this is the worst week of the year and we'll get through it. But with all that said, we are obviously going to dive into week one and reviewing of the games of the week. Starting with that, we are going to review the Texas-Ohio State game. As we know, Ohio State came out victorious 14-7 over Texas. And a game that was pretty much just a defensive battle. I mean, can't talk highly enough on Matt Patricia's defensive approach in that game. They made Arch Manning look very, very uncomfortable. Arch, I think, had a really rough game, and I think he has more to prove than I originally thought he did. I mean, you could tell in the games that he did not trust his arm. He did not trust his reads. He did not trust himself at times, and he got very annoyed at that to the point that he threw a pick then late in the game. And I just wasn't very impressed with Arch's performance, if I'm being honest. And honestly, same thing with Julian Sayin. I think he's getting a little too much light because he did win the game, but there was a lot of balls that he missed. And on their second touchdown, that throw deep to Carnell Tate, I mean, he caught it, don't get me wrong, but he threw it very short and made a ridiculous catch. So I feel like Julian Sayin still has some improvement to do, but overall, that defense for Ohio State is legit. It's what we expected. Ohio State's defense was one of the biggest question marks coming into this, and they did a great job. And also, I think Texas's defense as well did a great job, but Ohio State just panned out to be the better team. Both quarterbacks, I still think have a lot to prove. We will see there in their next, I guess you'd call warm-up games of week two. We truly get to see the big jump for them. But overall, I did think Texas was going to win this game, and my prediction was wrong. And Ohio State, once again, proves that they're the better team. And this is, once again, a top Big Ten team beating a top SEC team. It's starting to become a trend a little bit here, and I am starting to fully believe that Big Ten top-tier teams are better than SEC top-tier teams. It just keeps repeating itself. It gets to a point where it's going to start becoming a reality. And I don't think SEC fans are going to like that too much, but it's just becoming a strong reality in my eyes. But moving on to the next game of the week, we are going to last week. LSU Clemson. Obviously, we know LSU was victorious, 17-10 over Clemson. I feel like LSU just flat out dominated this game. The scoreboard shows it a little closer than I thought it was. Obviously, we did not expect Brian Kelly to finally get over the narrative and win a week one game. But congrats to him, and he has his team ready to roll. It was just a defensive dominant game again. The Weeks brothers dominated like I thought they would at linebacker. Cade did not look comfortable at all throwing the ball. LSU's offense looked a little more comfortable than Clemson's offense. I think Nussmeier had a great game because he was hitting his receivers in stride. I just think it was an overall great game for LSU, but they still do have a lot to improve on. But they got out of Death Valley, but not their own Death Valley, Clemson's Death Valley with the win, which is all that matters. And I think this team can be a top team in the SEC now after what I saw. Linebackers played obviously well, like I said, but their wide receivers were in rhythm with Gus. And offensive line had a lot of movement. I'm excited for this LSU team and Brian Kelly so they can go. Now talking about Clemson, I thought this game was disappointing defensively. Felt like they looked unorganized at times. Cade did not look like his usual self, out of rhythm. Wide receivers couldn't create some separation at times. Cade missed some throws. And also, they won the turnover battle. Clemson won the turnover battle and still found a way to lose this game, and you will not lose the game winning a turnover battle. You just can't. You won the turnover battle and you still found a way to lose. I don't like that at all. But as long as they can just keep the priorities straight, get back on the path. They do have an ACC schedule, so they do control their whole destiny in front of them. And Clemson is still a top team in the country in my eyes, and I think you still will see them on the path to the playoffs. But bunker in. Dabo's a great coach. He will get that team going correctly. The final game of the week last week I do want to talk about is Notre Dame and Miami. Miami came out 27-24 victors in this game, and this game shocked me as well, if I'm being honest. Miami was playing lights out football, if I'm being honest. I feel like this game lived up to what it should have been. I feel like this was the best game out of the three. This is the only game, in my opinion, that had that true playoff feeling of points were still put up on the board, but defense, end of the day, did win this. But Notre Dame, in my opinion, did not look good at all. I mean, they struggled to get Jeremiah Love going. I feel like he wasn't full of himself. I do think Jeremiah Love needs to calm down with trying to jump over people as much because he's going to get injured, and the bash on him has always been him getting injured. So I think he needs to relax on that a little bit. CJ Carr, obviously, he made some mistakes, but for a first time starter, you're going to see some mistakes. But overall, I actually think he had a pretty good performance. He looked super composed, had some right reads of the ball. I was actually pretty impressed with his first start, in my opinion. I mean, I expect some guys to make mistakes, but especially in a top 10 matchup like that, going against a very talented Miami defense, I thought he did well overall. But Miami, on the other hand, it's exactly what the people wanted to see in Miami. Carson Beck, super composed, had all this, like, I don't know if he's going to be the Carson Beck of 2023 coming in, and he absolutely did. Super smart with the ball, throws it on rhythm. I've always been a fan of Carson Beck at Georgia. I think last year people kind of used him as a scapegoat to blame all their problems, and now he's shown that really wasn't him. Um, he just made smart decisions, and Miami has already have a star down there in the making in their freshman wide receiver, Malachi Tony. He was destroying them in man coverage every time they went in. Notre Dame runs the most man coverage out of anyone in college football. I mean, he bursted on the scene with 6 catches, 85 yards, and a touchdown. And every time they ran man, they could have thrown it to him every time. I mean, he was winning the routes, winning every time against some very talented corners too. And so I think Miami made a great first impression of the year. I'm excited to see what they can do throughout the rest of the year. They do have a big Week 4 matchup coming up soon with Florida, which I'm already getting really excited about. But for now, Miami just take it week by week, and I think this team is a contender in the ACC, which the ACC, in my eyes, just went from one team that just had my eyes stuck on them to now three, which rolls into obviously Clemson and Miami I'm talking about. But the third team, obviously, again, we need to talk about is the upset down in Tallahassee. Florida State 31, Bama 17. I mean, this is a shocker, if I'm being honest. I don't think anyone out there besides Lee Corso himself thought this could happen. And Florida State dominated the game. They didn't just win it, they dominated. You can't sit there and say Bama played this game. Bama was still the better team and found ways to lose. No, Florida State ran them up and down the field. And Castellanos talked all the talk all week, how they weren't going to stop him, and they don't have Nick Saban the same. And you know what? He talked the talk, and he backed it up. And he had a day. I mean, on his arms, his legs, making smart decisions all across the field. Florida State impressed dang near everyone that watched him that day, and they put the world on shock. And I personally love that because anyone that has been watching college football out there for a while, you know, when Florida State's good, it just makes college football better. And that's what's awesome. But the more concerning part here is Alabama. I mean, they've lost a lot of games in their last 5 games. I mean, they've dropped the game to Oklahoma. They've dropped the game to unranked Michigan. Then they start the season, they're dropping a game to an unranked Florida State. I mean, they're struggling right now, and I don't know what to really think of this right now. I'm still very high on Kalen DeVore. He is a great coach, and I think we need to get some things fixed in Alabama, but at the same time, you might sit here and ask yourself, is this the end of the Alabama dynasty? And did we see it come to an end probably this weekend? I mean, I don't know. Ty Simpson did not look composed whatsoever besides the first drive. I think all three big-name quarterbacks I've listed did not impress too well. The three, I think Julian's saying, did do the best, but I don't think they did too hot. I mean, their defense, Alabama's defense did not look good at all. Florida State could do whatever they want to them. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm sitting here now thinking, like, will this team be even lucky to be 500 in the SEC? I mean, they have a rough schedule. I just really don't know with this Bama team. They need to show some life because the only guy that was out there actually playing football was the receiver Bernard, who single-handedly, I thought, kept them in this game with 8 receptions and almost 150 yards receiving. So I really don't know what to think of this Bama team anymore. I think we need a few more games to truly see if they're going to try to reclaim what they should be or if they're finally going to accept that Bama's not what they should be anymore, and fans are going to start freaking out down there, calling for DeVore's head, and it's going to get ugly. So, with all that said, all you Bama fans out there, I'm in the same boat as you. Is don't hit the panic button yet, but it's definitely one of the closest ones already in week one in college football, in my opinion, because it was just such a shocking loss in the fact the way they lost it. I'm not shocked like seeing a ranked team always lose a week one game they shouldn't, but it's the way they got dominated that concerns me a lot. So, but obviously there's always some few other games to talk about from the weekend that aren't about upsets and game of the weeks. And I want to touch on the two Friday night. Obviously, we did have Georgia Tech playing that night against Colorado. We did have Baylor playing against Auburn. I want to touch on both of those games. And first one I want to touch on is Georgia Tech winning 27-20 over Colorado. And this was just such a poor performance out of Georgia Tech in the first half with so many turnovers and sloppy football, and they still found a way to come back and win this game in the second half, which shows me that this team's already in midseason form, if I'm being honest, because teams like that, and usually week one, if they have two or three turnovers, they shut down, they lose the game, and they're done for. But this team rallied in the second half, showed that their coaching's still there, and showed that those turnovers were a fluke. Turnovers are expected in week one, but not as many as Georgia Tech had. They still found a way to win it. So even though I did say this team's in midseason form, that second half is the midseason form I'm talking about. And I'm very excited for this Georgia Tech team, especially them playing Clemson in 2 weeks. I'm super excited for that game already, too. Big win for the Yellow Jackets, though. Colorado's no slouch team, and I think this game was overlooked a little bit of the public, like how talented of a comeback it was for Georgia Tech to stay composed. Secondly, we're going to talk about Baylor losing to Auburn 38-24. This game took a turn. I think the scoreboard doesn't show it as much, but I think Auburn completely dominated this game. Jackson Arnold was running around everywhere more than his arm. They couldn't contain him. He kept picking up big plays on his legs, and then when he couldn't pick up on his legs, he was throwing it too. Their defense played a lot better than I thought. Sawyer Robinson played well, but at the end of the day, this Baylor team did not play as I expected they would play overall. I feel like they could have attacked them in the pass game more, and they didn't. I feel their first two drives when they kicked the field goal and then went for it on fourth down to go to 10-0, I think that was a make-or-break play right there because I think if Baylor goes up 10-0 that quick, I think Auburn starts to freak out, and so does Hugh Freeze. But that ended up being probably one of the biggest stops of the game, and it flipped scripts completely, and Auburn took over from there, and they never looked back. So this Auburn team, I feel like we still need another game to fully evaluate them against another decent opponent, but a big win like that week one of Baylor is nothing you should not look at. It's very, very talented Baylor team, and I think they deserve the credit, but I'm excited to see what this Auburn team can do when we get into SEC play. And then another game I would like to touch on quickly is UCLA and Utah. I mean, Nico's first start did not go as he expected whatsoever. UCLA getting absolutely blown out by Utah. And I honestly can't say I'm shocked. I mean, Nico went to a lesser team with lesser talent, and Utah did the exact opposite. Brought in a kid from New Mexico in Daper, and he can play. I mean, he's a quarterback and do it dunk with his legs, with his arm. Talented guy. I think Utah slept on team this year. They dominated him. It was a blowout, but I didn't think it would be that big of a blowout, but I definitely thought Utah would handle this game. They handled it exactly the way I thought, and they're a team that's shown that they can compete in the Big 12 this year, and I'm excited to see what Utah can do. And UCLA has a tricky game this upcoming week that we will talk about in a little bit. So on the security locks this week, unfortunately, I'll be up front honest. I went 0-3. Nebraska minus 6.5 did not hit. They only won by 3. I had Kennesaw State versus Wake Forest. I had Wake Forest minus 13.5. They only somehow beat Kennesaw by a single point. And my third one was obviously, I told you guys last week, if I fall for the Bama trap, I fall for it. And you know what? I fell for it. I took Bama minus 13.5. So, very terrible start to the season. I'm 1-4, but I do not see things taking a turn for whatsoever. I'm going to turn this thing around, and we're going to get this back where it should be. This week, I do like a lot of the games, and I would pick more than 3 security locks this week if I could, if I felt confident. But at the end of the day, I do not need to get greedy. I want to get you guys the 3 best picks, I think, of the week. But we are going to flip this script around, I promise you guys. A lot of things went wrong, and I see it around in the industry, too. A lot of people struggled this week, so don't think it's only me, too. A lot of professionals out there struggled this week are in the same boat as me. But for my underdog pick of the week last week, however, I did pick Cal, and Cal put on a great performance and actually pulled off the upset 35-15 over Oregon State. So I am 1-1 on my underdogs, though, which is still a good category that works for value. Their freshman five-star balled out of Cal. The transfer from Oregon to Cal looked very talented and improves at least my record somewhere, and it looks a little good. So at least we had a little bright spot of last week in the gambling world. But moving on. Now it's time. We're going to talk week 2. Obviously, we talked week 1. We're done with it now. It's in the past. We learned what we could learn. Try to watch all the games we can. And moving into week 2, now we have some more information. The more information we can gain can also help us too. And we find the teams we like. Rolling into the game of the week. This comes as no shocker here. This is Michigan at Oklahoma. Oklahoma opens up as a 5.5-point favorite, and Michigan is plus 115. Diving into it right here, I think for this game, we finally get to see both teams go up against some real talent. I'm excited to see Bryce Underwood in his first real collegiate start, in my opinion. And I'm excited to see how John Mateer does because he balled out last week and looked like the guy for them. Key components in this game, in my opinion, is Brett Venables' great record against freshman quarterbacks. He's known to give them many problems, and he's actually never lost a game to a freshman quarterback. When he was at Clemson as a DC and at Oklahoma, he gives them fits. He's very smart in his scheme he runs. A lot of freshman quarterbacks aren't used to seeing him. So Brett Venables is a coach you need to watch whenever you have a freshman quarterback starting, which is what is happening this week. Going into the deep dive, position to position this week, I do have quarterback going to Michigan. Obviously, I think Mateer is more of a veteran than Bryce Underwood. Nothing really said here, but talent-wise, they probably are a little bit on par, just overall experience. Running back, this was a close one, but I think Jay Knott at Oklahoma is a very good running back. Obviously, Michigan's running backs balled out this weekend in the past game against New Mexico, but Jay Knott overall, I think, is more of a threat. Wide receivers, I give to Oklahoma. I think this is no real shocker here, in my opinion. Tight end, this is like a little coin toss, in my opinion, but I did give it to Oklahoma once again. O-line, I give it to Michigan. D-line, I give to Michigan. Defensive tackles to Michigan. Linebackers, this is a little bit of a toss-up in my opinion too, because Michigan linebackers are always good, but they don't have as much depth there, but I am going Michigan at linebackers. Corners, I do have Oklahoma. This one might shock you guys a little bit, but Oklahoma does have some studs there that you cannot forget about. In safeties, I have Oklahoma as well. Special teams, I have Michigan. And coaching this week, I am actually going Oklahoma because of that freshman note. So with all that said, it is 7-5 favor of Oklahoma. I do think this game is going to be very close, in my opinion. But just going right out the gun, telling you guys straight up, this game is one of my security locks, and I'm taking Oklahoma minus 6.5 alt lined up. I think Michigan's performance last week against New Mexico could have been a little better, less some uncertainties there. Oklahoma's performance was not whatsoever. They were out there gunslinging it, doing everything they could, showing everything they could, and I just don't like rookie quarterbacks going into these big matchups, especially on the road in your first road environment. I mean, look what Arch Manning did this weekend in his first road game at at Oklahoma State. He just struggled. Look at Ty Simpson in his first road game at Florida State. He struggled. I think this is going to be a repetitive story. He's going to struggle. And that's why I feel like Oklahoma minus 6.5 here is a great pick. Just take the veteran at quarterback, veteran at running back, veteran coaching staff. I'm all about it. I'm very high on Oklahoma in this game. And give me Oklahoma minus 6.5, alt lined up from 5.5. Some other notable games I do want to talk about. That is the only game of the week. I think that deserves it. But all these notable games right here, I think all could easily be games of weeks in their own way, but I don't think they're going to have the media attention that this one's going to have. Other notable games, obviously you cannot leave out a big rivalry in Iowa State. Iowa State opens up at -3, and Iowa's plus 130 as an underdog. This game's close every year. I know one of the biggest takes in this game is always hammer the under because these two teams know each other so well and play great defense. But I think Rocco Becht is going to have a big game. The running backs at Iowa State are going to keep doing what they do. Obviously, this is the first true test we get to see in Iowa's transfer quarterback against a real defense and their offensive line because they claim that they have their offense fixed. But the thing you can always trust in Iowa is they're going to have a great defense. But the end of the day, I do see Iowa State being the stronger team here. This is not a security lock pick whatsoever, but I do like Iowa State alt line down to 2.5 for this pick. And it's at Iowa State, which also gives me some more leeway to go that way. With that said, I am moving into the next game of Illinois versus Duke. Illinois is -3, and Duke is plus 125. And obviously, Illinois, this is their big test of the year. This is their first big test. Altmaier can see what he has in his team. Obviously, Brett Bielema always has a team ready to play some good football against a Duke team that is a little bit underlooked, in my opinion. They're a very talented team down there in the ACC. I think they're going to give teams some fits, but overall, I'm not overlooking this game too much, in my opinion. I think Illinois -2.5 is the best pick here, and it actually is one of my security lock picks of the week of Illinois -2.5. I don't see Brett Bielema dropping games that he shouldn't drop. He's almost turning into another version of a top-tier Big Ten school in just games that he shouldn't lose. They don't have the talent there yet, but they don't drop games that they shouldn't drop. And I feel like this is a game that Brett Bielema wants to get going before they get into Big Ten play, and that's why I have a security lock of -2.5 on Illinois. Another big game that we're going to talk about is Baylor versus SMU. Baylor has another hard matchup this week at SMU. SMU's -2.5, and Baylor's plus 120 underdog. I think Baylor has a little bit of an advantage here because they had a ramp-up game against a big competition, unlike SMU playing an FCS school I haven't heard of in a long time. But at the end of the day, Jennings is still a great quarterback at SMU. Maryland is a tight end you have to watch for. But I still think Sawyer Robinson is the better quarterback out of him and Jennings, throwing-wise. But overall, it's pretty – we know how Kevin Jennings likes to get it done on his legs. But Baylor, I still think, has better wide receivers, but it all comes down to how do they adjust. I mean, SMU has really good tape on BYU. Baylor. And we'll see how they attack them. So this game, I think, is a very big game for SMU and Baylor, because if Baylor starts out 0-2, it's not a good start at all, and SMU needs to get out to a good start because the ACC, in my opinion, just got a lot stronger. So I don't really know what to go here, if I'm being honest. This is a game I'm going to tell you guys right now I'm staying away from. Too much uncertainty. But if I had to go one way, I just do not see Baylor starting out 0-2. I think they're going to be playing with their heart on fire, and that's why I think Baylor plus 120 is a decent pick. If you like the points, take the points. But if I had to go one way, I do like Baylor in that matchup again, and I'll put my faith yet again in Baylor and see what it does to me. The next game that I honestly think is the second best game of this week that I feel like people are going to overlook is Kansas versus Missouri. Obviously, these two teams had great weeks this past weekend. Kansas, they're on fire right now with their quarterback. Obviously, Daniels, we've talked about on the show multiple times. Mizzou, Bo Prabula looked amazing in the first half, throwing some deep balls right on the dot, getting it down with his legs. But I'm ready to see him actually do this against an FBS opponent. Kansas has at least had some runs at an FBS team in Fresno State and still dominated it. But both these teams are very talented, which leads me to the reason that I think actually the play in this game is the over 50.5. Kansas can score. Missouri can score. We don't really know how their defenses are going to do against high-powered offenses because they haven't seen it yet, which they both have high-powered offenses. I think the over 50.5 is a great play here. It's not a security lock pick, but it's up there. And if I had to give a spread, I honestly don't know where I could tell you here. I have a lot of faith in Bo Prabula, but I also have a lot of faith in Jane Daniels. And Kansas is just a team that I think has a lot of value for, say, if you want to talk value. At plus 190, I think the value's there, but I'm staying away from their spreads, and I'm going with the over 50.5 for my pick for that game. Rolling into another game I want to talk about this week, which is my third and final security lock of the week. And for all you guys out there that have known me a long time, this one will come as no shocker at all. And I'll talk about the other one a little bit. But Navy versus UAB, and I'm taking Navy alt line down to 20.5 because the line is 21.5 down to 20.5. The academies. Army this year, I hate to say it, but we are not going to be able to rely on Army this year. Their game against Tartan State was very disappointing. They have a matchup this week in Kansas State. Kansas State's also been very disappointing, too. It's going to be a matchup of two very disappointing teams that are off to a start that can still turn around the season. But let's talk about Army. Let's talk about Navy. Navy, obviously, you have Horvat. He's going to do well. I bet on this exact game last year of Navy versus UAB, and I think Navy was minus 13.5, and they won by 50. I see no different story here. Navy minus 20.5. I am taking over UAB. That is one of my security locks of the week. Hammer it in now. I want it. Moving on to the next game, Arizona State versus Mississippi State. Another marquee matchup of teams that are trying to either get back to where they belong or teams that are trying to make themselves known. In Arizona State, obviously Dillingham, he's a character out there saying how he got outcoached by NIU and has a ton of respect for them. At the end of the day, Dillingham is one of the better coaches in the Big 12. Love what he does. This game is at Mississippi State, but Mississippi State had a good performance against Southern Miss. Obviously, Charlie Huff down to Southern Miss had a good game plan going in. He gave a little struggles at the end of the day. An SEC team is going to pull away from a school like Southern Miss. But Arizona State's a whole different task, and I think Arizona State in this game, minus 6.5. I actually like that line a lot. Arizona State minus 6.5 would be my pick for this game. I think Mississippi State's about to start a schedule that's going to be a little grueling for them, and Jeff Levy is a great coach. I just don't think he's going to have this team ready for the firepower of Arizona State and all the talent they return on defense. This team is just honestly probably looked over NAU a little bit, which you should never do, but they're ready for those big matchups. They want them. They want to get them out the way. And that's why I'm taking Arizona State minus 6.5. Moving into some sleeper games after we talked about all those notable matchups that you guys should keep an eye on. I do have 3 sleeper games that you should keep your eye on. That if you have some time, not so much betting, but just to get to learn some teams more, in my opinion. The biggest one that pops out to me is USF versus Florida. Obviously, last week, USF, they impressed us. They looked very good. Brown, their quarterback, was running over people, scoring touchdowns left and right, getting it done with his arm. I think this is going to be a great game against them against Florida. Florida obviously blew out LIU. Lagway, this is his first, I think, true kind of test, not a true test. But USF they looked very, very composed, talented. I'm excited for this game just to see how they match up against each other. The line is minus 17.5 for Florida and USF plus 600. If I had to lean away here, I kind of do like USF in the points. I know it is in the swamp, but this is Florida's first really true test against a team that is somewhat talented. I mean, LIU is no match for an SEC school, let alone Florida. But I think USF can get some talent done here, and that's why I think the points here in this game could be very valuable. Another game I would like to talk about is Vanderbilt versus Virginia Tech. Vanderbilt has a lot of hype coming into the season, and Virginia Tech just lost the game last week. They didn't even score a touchdown against South Carolina. They've struggled against Lenore Sellers. They always struggle against quarterbacks, if I'm being honest, Virginia Tech. But this line is open at Virginia Tech minus 1.5 and Vanderbilt minus 102 dog. This one I do want to look into a little more. I haven't had the true time to dive in this game because this line caught me so off guard. I don't know how you could give Virginia Tech points. I mean, I understand they're at home, which is probably some of it. But Vanderbilt's Diego Pavia is nothing like Lenore Sellers, don't get me wrong, but he can make plays like Lenore Sellers on his feet with his arm. He has a talented, obviously, tight end in Eli Stowers. I like Vanderbilt in this game, if I'm being upfront and honest. Virginia Tech did nothing last week that really shocked me, if I'm talking offense. I mean, they didn't score a touchdown. Drones struggled at times. Their defense did well against a very talented South Carolina team, but at the same time, they let up big plays. So I actually like Vanderbilt minus 102 here, or if you want to take the points, that would be my pick in that game of Vanderbilt over Virginia Tech in starting off Brett and Fry's year at 0-2, which is not what you want down there at Virginia Tech. And finally, the last sleeper game to watch this week would be UConn versus Syracuse. I know this one probably comes as a shock for you guys, but last week UConn put up the most yards of offense they ever have in their school history. I know they were playing Central Connecticut, but they also did have the most attendance at a game since 2013 with over 36,000 fans at a UConn game. So there is something brewing up there in UConn. I'm very pleased with their performance. I did get to watch a little bit of it, but not enough. But I will be watching more of it this week when I get time. Syracuse, I honestly thought played not so well against a Tennessee team that shocked a lot of us too. Obviously, Joey Aguilar put on a game that a lot of us didn't see, and I'm going to be the first one to say it out here and out loud. I think this team looks better without Nico. I full on believe that Tennessee team just functioned better without Nico. Aguilar got a lot of stuff done. The team just looked more in sync. I like Joey Aguilar at Tennessee. I didn't think I would. I'm starting to become a fan of it. And the way they controlled Syracuse was very impressive. I do think Syracuse -7 is like the perfect line here for Vegas because it makes you pick. Syracuse at home, I mean, they did show some bright signs in that game. They did make Tennessee be on their heels at times on defense, which is hard to do to an SEC school. So if I had to lean one way here, I probably would go Syracuse -6.5. But this is the farthest from a security lock you can get. Avoiding that game, going to watch it and have some fun with it. After we talked all over all those sleeper games, we talked over the notable games, I do want to dive into my underdog of the week rolling into week 2. And week 2, my underdog of the week is actually UNLV Moneyline versus UCLA. And the reason I'm picking this is a little risky one. There's a lot more other games out there that I feel like are safer for an underdog pick. But there's just something talking to me about this game. I mean, UCLA just got waxed by Utah. They're probably not in the best headspace right now. Nico looked very frustrated. Their defense couldn't stop anyone. Neither could their offense, could barely score points. They struggled against a running quarterback. Well, that's exactly what UNLV is. UNLV, Calandria can throw the ball past the ball. They have weapons. UNLV did have a big jump from week 1 to week 2, in my opinion. But they still have some to show. But it's another week that Dan Mullen's going to get this team gelling, and UNLV has some talent, especially seeing Boise State go down the way they did. UNLV probably is liking where they're at right now, and they're motivated to play. And I feel like this is one of the Power 5 Group of 4 matchups that you could see, right? I mean, sorry, Power 4 and Group of 5 matchups that you could see that could potentially go the way it shouldn't. And UCLA is new, start off with Nico, might not start as well. This is a risky one, but I'm putting it out there that I will be taking UNLV against UCLA as an underdog at plus 125. After deep diving most of all those games, week 2, obviously I want you guys to know that these games this week, there's a lot more lines I feel that we're comfortable with. A lot of games that you need to pay attention to, not just marquee games. I think in week 1 you were so caught up in the top 3 big matchups that you couldn't really watch all the other games to learn, to explore, and see all these teams. This week is a complete opposite. There's one big game, but there's so many notable games I think out there that you want to watch. There should be 2 or 3 TVs on if you have the opportunity, watching all these games and getting to learn them. Because another week gone by, obviously, teams are going to get more talented. Big jumps from week 1 to week 2. Anyone out there that's played football, a good coach would have told you that before, that you see your biggest jumps from week 1 to week 2. And I expect to see that out of a lot of these teams. But at the end of the day, my security lock picks, once again, for the week are Navy -20.5 against UAB, Illinois -2.5 against Duke, and Oklahoma alt lined up to 6.5 against Michigan. All 3 of those picks, I do feel confident, and all those other picks I did talk about today, I do feel also confident about, but take them as you wish. Hopefully we can have a better week there, and that is the end of my week 2 deep dive. I do want to talk a little bit about some quarterback play. You guys heard me say that I was not impressed with Arch Manning, was not impressed with Julian Sain, and I was not impressed with Ty Simpson. I do feel like all 3 of these guys have a chance to make a big bounce back, and it's not the end of their season. I just think they got thrown into the fire in some hard week 1 matchups, which is hard to do in college football. I expect to see these guys all do very well, bounce back, have great weeks, and hopefully we can see them open up a little more, come out of their shell, and dominate the games that they are in. But overall, I think the biggest shocker this week comes to no surprise. Florida State, we need to keep an eye on them. Disappointment, Bama. And you had 4 teams lose in the top 10. I just got a notification 10 minutes ago right here that the AP pool just dropped. So I might as well go over while I'm right here on the podcast, and we'll talk about them from here down to see what we think about the latest pool. Because obviously, as you guys know, I do my security top 25 rankings, and I rank them off of right now in the moment instead of actual top 25. So I think no shocker here. We'll go over the top 10 that were just listed by ESPN in the power rankings. We have Ohio State at 1, Penn State at 2, LSU at 3, Georgia at 4, Miami at 5, Oregon at 6, Texas at 7, Clemson at 8, Notre Dame at 9, and South Carolina at 10. Overall, I think this is a great list, but immediately the biggest red flag to me is how far Texas dropped from 1-7. I do think, honestly, that's a little too extreme for a team that lost in a one-score matchup at Ohio State. I think that is a little extreme compared to an Oregon team that just, I mean, they played Montana State and they blew them out, but they showed some bright spots. I would think Texas maybe at 6 is more reasonable. Miami at 5 is fine. But South Carolina 10 shocks me a little bit too, if I'm being honest. They played well, but they did nothing to impress me to jump 3 spots from 13 to 10. But overall, Arizona State at 12, Florida at 13, Florida State at 14 from unranked to 14. That's a huge jump. Michigan at 15, Oklahoma at 18. So we have a 15-18 matchup this week. The thing I am shocked about is how's Alabama still in the top 25. They dropped the whole way down to 21. I do full on believe this team does not deserve to be ranked. I feel like they should not be ranked whatsoever. Drop them out, punish them. Let's see Bama unranked. But some new teams that cracked the ranking, obviously, besides Florida State, Utah, who very much deserves it, and obviously the team that we've been talking about the most in Florida State. If I had to give you guys my top 10 right now in security, the locks way, I would be putting Ohio State at 1 now as well. But they still have some question marks at quarterback, but their defense answered all the questions I had, deserves to be there. Number 2, I would actually move up Penn State as well. Penn State's defense caused so many turnovers this weekend. Wide receivers played well, but they did play against a school like in Nevada. Don't have to do much there, but Drew Aller looked composed. A lot of good things that are happening in Happy Valley that weekend. LSU at 3, I do think you could argue for them actually being number 2 because they did have a big win. They have all the answered questions right now. So if I had to really put them in, I would kind of put them at that 2A, 2B spot. But just for now, I will keep LSU at 3, but I would jump them in the upcoming pool probably if they play as they should. Number 4, I would actually put Miami. The reason I put Miami here over Georgia, which shock you guys, is they answered all the questions I had for them, or answers at wide receiver, their answers on the D line, their corners played well. They beat a very talented Notre Dame team. I would actually have them at 4. I would have Georgia then at 5. I would have Texas at 6, Oregon at 7, Clemson at 8. And then from there, honestly, I don't think Notre Dame or South Carolina necessarily deserve to be in the top 10, in my opinion. I would probably slide up Arizona State to probably 9 and Illinois probably to 10 with Notre Dame at 11 and South Carolina at 12. I don't really understand jumping 3 spots, beating a Virginia Tech school that's not very talented, let alone not very much controlling the game. I don't see it there, but very great AP pool. I'm happy that we could talk about that today so you guys can know where the AP pool is sitting. Overall, biggest matchup, 15 versus 18 in Michigan, Oklahoma. Excited for that one. But with all that said, guys, I hope all this information has helped you guys today. Super excited about the week. Cannot wait to get back on track more than anything. And if you guys have any questions, concerns, or just want to know about some other games this week, do not be afraid to reach out. I'm super excited for week 2. Let's see these matchups. And, hey, we'll see you next week.